Hello, hi everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Tazreen Hussein, and on behalf of the Academy of Bangla Arts and Culture, I'm thrilled to have you join us for our live panel discussion with some incredible speakers as part of our very first virtual program commemorating 21 February. Now, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the Academy of Bangla Arts and Culture, or as it's more commonly known, ABAC, ABAC is a Dallas, Texas-based nonprofit cultural organization founded in 1988 with the aim to educate, honor, and celebrate Bangla history, traditions, and culture in all its forms. Now, today we're here to explore how the new generation of Bengalis, particularly in the diaspora, are redefining Bangla culture for themselves based on their bicultural identity, fostering community and creating access for Bengalis from different backgrounds, and identifying ways to allow future generations to learn and connect with their Bengali heritage, language, and culture. So joining us today live, we have Nafisa Islam, founder of Children of 1971. Welcome, Nafisa. We're so thrilled to have you join us today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this.
Of course. We also have Takbir Rahman, who is the creator of Life in Bangla. Hi, Takbir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. So excited to have this talk.
Awesome. And our final two guests, we have Raya Rahman, who is the founder of Guba Books, and Inshra Russell, who works as the creative partner for Guba Books. Raya and Inshra, welcome to you both, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tazreen. This is such a wonderful idea, this panel, and I'm so honored to be invited to it. So thanks for having us.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm really excited to speak to everybody else and see what we talk about.
Absolutely. So I know we're all very excited to start the discussion, but before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items. One is to my fellow panelists, please feel free to speak in either English or Bangla. This is a panel that highlights bicultural identity and the importance of speaking our language. So I want to make sure everyone feels comfortable speaking in either language. Two, for everyone viewing on our Facebook, please feel free to ask us questions. Ask questions to the panelists in the comments. Towards the end of this discussion, should we have time for it, sorry, I'm running over my own words, we're gonna try to answer some of your questions. And if we don't have time, we can at least try to respond afterwards so that it will stay there live. And then finally, I just wanna acknowledge our third panelist, Farha Hanif, of the Bangladeshi Mural Project, was unfortunately able to join us today. But for folks that wanna learn more about the incredible community-driven effort to create the largest Bangladeshi-themed mural outside of Bangladesh, we'll be sharing more information and links with additional information in the comments after we finish our event today. Okay, so let me just set the scene here very quickly, and then we'll go around and I'll ask you all some questions. I'm really excited to hear from you, but I kind of want to frame the discussion today because this panel is a little bit different from what we're used to creating with the Academy of Bangla Arts and Culture, ABAC. So as we all know, the Bangla language movement started as a protest against the blanket policy of making Urdu the national language for all of Pakistan, because at the time, Bangladesh was known as West Pakistan. So student leaders, activists, political activists, and everyday men and women decided to push back against this very exclusionary policy because it was denying their ability to speak, live, and learn as people, and because that was the main language spoken in the area at the time. Now, that movement lasted for years. It resulted in countless deaths, and through a lot of hardship was ultimately successful in preserving our language as an official language of the nation. But it was also a catalyzing moment that ultimately led to the fight for independence in West Pakistan into what we now know as Bangladesh. Now, for me, the connection between the struggle to protect our identity, the right for self-determination, and really the fight against discrimination and injustice really resonated with me, particularly given the state of affairs that we are in the US and elsewhere, and the broader social justice movements that are ongoing. Now, the language movement itself also highlighted a very significant part of our universal identity as people, which is the importance of language. So much so that the UN has now recognized February 21st as International Mother Language Day, which happened to be the bloodiest day of protest in West Bengal at the time. UNESCO has recognized this day to promote the preservation and protection of all languages used by people of the world as a way to promote unity and diversity and international understanding through multilingualism. So we wanted to focus today's discussion on the next generation, particularly first-generation immigrants, because our reality is now vastly different from that of our parents and our family members who grew up so close to this movement. Being born and raised outside of Bangladesh, our parents and their generation did what they could to teach us our history, but we also had to navigate between these two worlds, that of being Bengali and that of growing up American, or as you and Shra in the UK. And that was a tough challenge, right? I would even say, for me personally, growing up in the 80s and 90s, and even in the early 2000s, there was always an internal battle between honoring our families and everything that they come from, our culture and our traditions, to being accepted into Western society. And I think now my generation is much more comfortable with being and identifying as both. But that came with a lot of learning and unlearning and acceptance of this experience, which is a continued choice we have to make every day. I would even say now, for Gen Z in particular, they've really leaned into their individual Bengali identities, even more so now because society is much more accepting of these differences, and they feel like they don't have to choose between these different identity, mostly in part because of the initiatives that our panelists have started and taken on full steam ahead. So with that, I know we're all dying to hear from them and learn about their amazing work. So Nafisa, I want to start with you. Now, Nafisa, the work you and your team are doing at Children of 1971 is phenomenal. I have followed you all on Instagram and have seen you build this very large following with a simple mission, which is creating a storytelling platform for Bangladeshis across the diaspora, with the aim to heal, foster cultural appreciation, and build a community by connecting varied identities through common language, and also building a bridge between generations. So I want to hear from you more about the work you're doing with children, but can you also share a little bit about the background of how this idea was conceptualized and the motivation, behind creating this?
Yes. So thank you so much. That was so sweet. I really appreciate that you appreciate our work. I do have a big team, and we put a lot of heart, I would say, like heart and soul into this kind of work, finding people across the diaspora to share their stories. But I guess to start off, how did this begin? And something that you mentioned, Hazreen, was, that fighting internally, I think, between trying to embrace the Bangladeshi culture and the American culture. And I think I definitely had the same kind of experience as well. I grew up in Central Jersey, which didn't have as many Bangladeshis, but I was surrounded by Indians, Pakistanis, and a lot of the other South Asian diaspora. And I often found myself feeling like a misfit. And I'm sure that many Bangladeshis also may feel this way as well, but not feeling as though I was, not feeling as though I completely belonged, even though I was kind of placed into the scene. And also feeling just really detached from who I was, like deep down, which was Bangladeshi, and being proud to be that. I don't think that was pride was definitely not something, or being proud of my identity was definitely not something I would have ever said back in high school or even in college. So I think it was probably after I had graduated with my pharmacy degree and had kind of taken a step back from thinking about my career and starting to own my own identity. Someone had asked me for me to interview with them. And I thought that was so weird. I thought it was so strange that someone would ask me to interview with them. At the time, I am into personal training and I do fitness and stuff. So they wanted me to talk about that in relation to my own identity. And I thought, there's so many cooler people than there is. Like I'm really not that cool. Like the fact that they asked me, I thought that was so sweet. And I was like, for me to interview for this, like I feel as though I'm not even worthy. There's so many people out there that I would love to interview, and I feel as though the amazing things that our Bangladeshis do it goes unrecognized, and I thought it was time to kind of bring that to light. So I guess that was kind of how Children of 1971 started back in July of 2018, and from there it was kind of like full speed ahead. One thing I definitely realized from doing the work and going out and just finding people in the Bangladeshi diaspora is that, first off, we're so talented. It's insane. Like I literally just can't like grasp how much talent there is in Bangladesh diaspora, and also how similar our issues are as well. So that feeling of being, you know, alone, especially like growing up and feeling as though you didn't belong. Definitely stopped feeling that way once I started to connect with the Bangladeshi diaspora, and I saw that by sharing the stories, people felt the same way. So it was it was not like an accident, but it definitely grew into something way more beautiful than I would have ever imagined. So very, very grateful for Children of 1971 and everybody who has contributed to our mission.
That's amazing. And I just love hearing this story because I feel like a lot of people can really resonate with your personal experience. And to hear how you've taken that and turned that into this huge community on Instagram with such a big following. When we initially spoke, you talked a lot about the motivation behind the name Children of 71. Can you share that a little bit here?
Yeah, so I think that Children of 1971 has, you know, it has a lot of meanings to it. But like first and foremost, historically, I think many people may know this now, but when we first started, it wasn't as well-known knowledge of the genocide of 1971, the how Pakistani soldiers, and you know, this is just a trigger warning for anyone out there who's ever dealt with sexual assault, but you know, many women from the Bangladeshi diaspora or Bangladesh during the 1971 war were raped by the Pakistani soldiers. And in turn, you know, a lot of them had children. So it's something that's, I feel like is not talked about. It's not talked about, this huge traumatic event that like almost 300,000 women had this experience. They're called the Biranganas. They were named that by Mujibur Rahman. So like during the 1971 war. And there's a whole slew of children that were also born out of the result of the war. So Children of 1971 definitely represents that group, because I feel as though, you know, they were shunned from the community. These women were shunned from the community. They were not included because of, obviously, it's a huge taboo in our culture, you know, where women are always blamed when they have sexual assault. And so to, I guess, recognize them and also recognize the children who may not feel like they belong to our country anymore, I feel like they're exactly who represent us, really, because we have that. We are the black sheep of the South Asian diaspora. We are resilient, and we've undergone many traumas. I think, you know, and I don't want to speak for all of the diaspora, but from what I know, from what I've learned, it's very common, the kind of incidents that have occurred. So that definitely has a lot to do with it. But in a lot of senses, I think of our organization as the mother for the diaspora, you know, like a healing, like loving energy that really accepts everybody as they are, regardless of what they've gone through. And I think that that's kind of the message we want to send by naming Children of 1971 that.
Absolutely. And that's a unique perspective, and also, you know, something different that you are doing with your storytelling is you're sharing stories about, you know, people that are trying to represent themselves wholly and feel valued based on their different identities. You know, even within the diaspora, there's so many different identities, people with different socioeconomic statuses, members of the LGBTQIA community, those in interracial relationships. You're highlighting their stories as well, including survivors of gender-based violence. So you're tackling a lot of different taboos amongst us. But sharing that as a way to kind of bring those stories to life, and making it a bit normalized, I would say. This is my last question to you. Can you tell me a bit more about what has the reaction been as you've been highlighting the stories? Like, how are people responding to this? Because it's on a very public scale on Instagram with so many people reading them, relating to them. Can you tell us a bit about what the reaction has been?
Yeah, of course. so I think that it was the point, you know, like to send these shocking stories out to the diaspora, and specifically not just to our generations, which I think that they're more aware themselves, but also to like the older generations. We share our stories on Facebook as well, and you know, parents also follow us on Instagram. Crazy as it is, I know like some people may not like that, you know, but the point is to demonstrate that there are people like this in the world, and that specifically, you know, especially when it comes to like, you know, same-sex marriage or, you know, coming out of the closet, those kind of things, obviously very taboo. I know from like my own experiences when we first started to talk about, you know, being gay in the diaspora, I remember, you know, my parents saying, "Are you sure you want to share that? Is that like, I don't know if that like will resonate well." And I'm like, this is exactly why we need to share it, because this is not just one story. It's actually many people's stories. And yes, it has been shocking, you know, but it's incredibly well received at the same time. Like I was actually very shocked at how well received our really, you know, I guess like, what would you say, out there stories have been. Like people have not, they only embrace the people who have shared those stories for the most part. And even with parents, I, you know, I have aunties and uncles I'm very close with, and they
Sorry, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty here, but that's okay. I think we can all relate to exactly what you're experiencing right now.
yeah, sorry guys, I'm at home for like, I'm at home today for that. So anyways, but like I said, when the aunties and uncles actually read this, they actually come up to me and like talk to me about this, and they say, "Wow, like I can't even believe that this is someone's story, or that this person has gone through this, or that they feel this way." And I think that just exposing the emotion behind it, you know, the emotion of like not feeling heard or not feeling seen or not feeling like you belong and stuff, and that like in itself generates empathy. And I think that empathy is what we need in our community and in the world in order for us to like move forward as a united group. So it's been really beautiful. I honestly am not, we haven't had too much, you know, I guess,
Pushback.
criticism regarding that. Yeah. So it's really good.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, empathy can be a powerful tool, and I think we can all agree, especially in this day and age, is something we need to see and experience a bit more. So thank you so much for sharing, and kudos to you and your team for working on this incredible initiative. I see the community growing every day, and every day I get more excited. So I want to now turn to Takbir. Now, Takbir, your account, Life in Bangla on Instagram, is one where I look forward to seeing a new post every day, simply because I learn something new every day. Can you tell us a bit about Life in Bangla? You know, why did you decide to create this? What is it, and what has the impact of this been so far?
Thank you so much. That makes me so happy, because I mean, just going into that, so growing up, I did not grow up around Bengali culture as much. In general, I didn't grow up around any Desi culture or anything of that sort. Especially, so I grew up in Brooklyn, but I moved to Long Island. I am New York based. For those of you, yeah. So when I moved to Long Island, I moved to a majority white school, and it wasn't only majority white; they were also very racist. So just trying to conform to that, it was not easy. I mean, I think for me personally, I'm just one of those people who I didn't really like take anything they were saying to me or stuff. So they kind of learned about my culture from me, and they learned to accept it, which was nice. But I did not kind of delve into like for example, like I learned how to read and write Bangla at a young age, but I didn't retain it. Um, but fast forward to college, I needed to take a language. So I'm trying to become a history teacher. So for the history major, you have to take a year of a foreign language. So I actually was looking through the languages. I was like, oh, what should I take? Whatever. And I was considering Spanish. I was like, I did this in high school. It'll be easy, whatever. And then I kept looking, and then I saw Hindi. I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. I heard it's similar to Bangla, whatever. I started learning Hindi, and I just started getting flashbacks to learning Bangla as a child because they are essentially identical, very very close scripts. So through my learning of Hindi, I actually relearned Bangla within a matter of 1 or 2 months. And that was so eye-opening to me because I didn't realize how much I had retained from I thought I'd lost it, but then I once I got it back, I was like, oh my God, this is like it's like it felt like a miracle to me, and it felt like a part of my culture that I had not explored before. And our language is so important to us. It's something that I mean, Bangladeshi specifically, like we fought for, and it was very important to me that I learned it. And I mean, it. So when I did relearn it, I actually started teaching a few of my friends because they reached out to me. They saw that I was on this journey to relearn how to read and write Bangla, and they were like, "We want to learn with you." So I then started teaching a few of my friends, 4 or 5 of them. And then I think it was December of 2019. One of my friends, she while I was teaching her one day, she was going through, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the account Words in Urdu, but beautiful account. They post a word in Urdu every other day, and then in the days in between they post a miscellaneous art post. And I was talking to my friend about it, and she was like, why can't we do this for Bangla? Like, this is such a good idea, and I feel like we could definitely do it. It's just that it hasn't been really like like executed before. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep this at the back of my mind. And then one day I was just like, you know what? Let me do it. Let's just go for it. So then I I still remember the day. Like I was in a Macy's with my parents, and I got so bored. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. This is let's see what happens. And I remember I posted the first day, my first post. It was just the word Bangla. It ended up getting reshared, I believe, over 1,000 times. And like didn't have any followers at that point, so I was like, what just happened? Like it blew up overnight, and I was shocked, honestly. I was really shocked. And then afterwards I was amazed. I was like, wow, like there's really like a market for, like, people really want to learn. And then from then we just kept going. So honestly, like, my team, I don't really have a team. It's just me, and my sister actually helps with marketing. So it's just the two of us. And I mean, ever since then, I've just kept posting, and I've gotten these amazing people giving me feedback, like my followers, saying that it's helped them reconnect to their culture. And also, like, I've heard people, a lot of my followers actually, unfortunately, they lost their parents young, and they were DMing me, and they were writing in the comments. They were like, this helped me reconnect with my parents, and like, you don't understand how big of a deal that is. That's what they were telling me. And it really, like, it made me it makes it all worth it, to be quite honest. But I rambled a little, but
No, that's okay.
yeah.
No, I think that's fascinating. And again, I think, what you've been able to create gained such a following because it resonated so well on so many different levels. And I think the example you just shared about how this was able to help some people connect with their parents is incredibly powerful. And that's really what language does, right? It gives you that sense of connection and understanding. So I love that. And I appreciate that. I want to ask you though, I was before we came on here, I was scrolling and I was looking at all the different words that you had, and it was very clear that you started doing some series of words based on some themes. You were very intentional about that, including a whole series on Black Lives Matter, which for me on a personal level is very impactful. To be honest with you, I didn't know how to say the word racism in Bangla before, and now we have it very clearly there and identified. So can you tell us a bit about how you choose which words you want to highlight and what your creation process is like ultimately?
Yeah. So like you said, like I have a theme. I've actually started to break away from the theme sometimes because I've seen that my followers have been responding. They're like, oh, like can you do this word and this word? And they have these very specific requests. So sometimes now what I do is in between themes, I'll have a few weeks where the followers send in words and I post those. So I've gotten a lot of feedback from that. But other than that, it is based on the theme. So specifically, I could give, like you brought up, the Black Lives Matter theme. Um, that I started literally, I think, a day or two after the murder of George Floyd. I mean, as many of us, I mean, I'm just gonna talk about my experience. I watched that. I watched the whole, how long was it? 13 minutes. I watched the whole clip, and I mean, needless to, I was mortified. And I think many of us were. And I just didn't know what to do with myself, and neither did anyone around me. And I was like, I don't know. I really, I don't know what to do, because what can you do? What can you do to comfort this family? And how do you explain that to a whole nation? It's mind boggling. So then I went into Life in Bangla that day, and I was like, you know what? We're going to, I don't care how we do it, we're going to bring awareness to this. And I came up with a few words. And one of them was the term, of course, Black Lives Matter. And on the side, I remember there's this organization who writes letters for Black lives, and they make Bangla translations of it. I was looking into that as well, and I was like, you know what? Also going to use this. So I started mapping out the words. So the first word I did for that theme was breath. And that was actually directly inspired by words in Urdu and also words in Sinhala, which is also, I'm just gonna give a quick shout out to them. They're an amazing account. It's for the Sinhala language based in Sri Lanka. So if you guys want to go follow them, please go and follow them. But that post was directly inspired by them. So the word that day was breath. And the next slide was I can't breathe 15 times, because that's how many times George Floyd had to say that, and he was still murdered. So that really resonated with the Life in Bangla followers. And then a few days after I posted the term Black Lives Matter, I believe that's our most liked and shared post, because I think it really helped people like put a label on it. Like even like if they wanted to explain like to their Bengali parents, like what is this movement, they could just say what it means. And I remember my parents also, they were kind of helping me with the words, because the reality of the situation is like, yeah, like I learned Bangla, relearned Bangla pretty recently, but like my parents are native Bangla speakers, so like they still help me with a lot of the stuff. And they were like, this could honestly make such a difference in the Bengali community, because the reality of the situation is, unfortunately, in the Bengali community, we have a lot of people who have racist tendencies. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? So I think that bridge that is having to be built between us and the older Bengali generation about this movement, I think it's really important that we took part in it. And I mean, that's just a small insight to how we
Right.
chose that theme, but that's pretty much how we choose the themes. We look at the current events going on and we go with the flow.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, what that whole movement, the death of George Floyd, has really showed us was the level of, bias and discrimination that exists in all of our communities. And it really forced us to take a look deeply internally and do some self-reflection. But I think having the language, the words in our own language, being able to convey how we're feeling to our parents and to other people in our communities, our uncles and aunties and bhai-bon, everyone, it helps create a level of understanding that didn't really exist before. It helps to kind of bridge that generational divide. and also, gives us the tools we need to create the change that we're wanting to create as a result of everything that's been happening in the world. So I just love that you were able to share that, and that you got such a positive response, because I think these are the tools that we need to continue to have these conversations moving forward. So thank you for that.
Thank
Now,
you.
I'm going to switch gears a bit, and now go to Raya and Intra. So Raya and Intra, Guba Books is an amazing resource. You guys are looking a bit forward to the next generation, even beyond where we're at today. So you created Guba Books, which is a dual language children's book publishing company, creating valuable stories and learning resources to inspire children to embrace a global mindset. Can you tell us a bit about what motivated you to create this publishing company and focusing on creating bilingual stories and resources in particular? I don't know, Rai, if you want to take this first.
Sure. I just want to say, Nafisa and Takbir, I was so inspired to hear your stories. It's truly incredible. And actually, it's a really good segue to why I started Guba Books with my childhood friend, Intra. It's because Intra and I didn't grow up in outside of Bangladesh. We were born there. We grew up there. It was actually a really fun childhood, and our teenage years were also a lot of fun. You live like this dual identity there, where you show a very bhadro face to your parents, and then behind the scenes you're all michka and you're doing all the fun stuff. So I think what I experienced when I became a mother was that I realized I have two daughters. My older one is 12 now, but when she started daycare and then eventually school, she really started to lose her language. She started to lose Bangla rapidly, because I speak English and my husband speaks English, I think we just continued speaking in English with her. So one fine day, I just realized that she really couldn't communicate in our language at all, and that was it was quite a moment. And it was at that time that I started looking for resources to really just acquaint her and get her to just love the language herself. Because I really am not the type of mom who wants to force something on my child. It's exhausting for on both sides. So that's when I realized that I know that if you're in Bangladesh, there are resources. You can go to bookstores and you don't even need to go to a bookstore. You have your grandparents right there, and everybody speaking in Bangla, and you're immersed in the culture. But I wasn't living in Canada at the time, and I really could not find anything. I looked online and I found some Meena cartoons, but my daughter could not relate to Meena cartoons, because much of Meena's ethos is to really encourage children in rural settings to be educated as girls, to use the bathrooms. Like, these are real social issues that exist in a rural setting. But we were living in downtown Vancouver at the time, and it just did not apply, obviously. So it was at that time that it was just like this aha moment. I'm like, oh, this doesn't exist. I'm going to do it. And then, later on, I always thought that, I could have done so many other things. It didn't have to be exactly that. But this was a while ago. I mean, this was when my daughter was younger, and I was working full time, so it wasn't as easy to just start a business just like that. But at that time, I did call the most talented person that I personally knew, and that's Intra. And she's like, everybody who's listening to this and knows Intra will be like, yes, they'll be nodding. So I called her and I said, hey, and I don't think she was a mom yet quite then. And I said, like, this is, and she is a very enthusiastic person in any case. So she just jumped right on board, and she started I was kind of like, okay, this is what it could be. We don't have a lot of resources that shows our language in a very beautiful, at the time, in a very beautiful way. And we certainly don't have books made to the caliber that's existing in the Western world. And that's what kids are seeing. They're used to really high quality everything, from animation to books to apps, just you name it. And I think that subliminally that tells kids that English is superior. French is superior, Bangla inferior, and that's growing up in Bangladesh, and we loved growing up in Bangladesh. Like we were also very lucky because there were lots of movements that encouraged kids to love their nation, to do for their nation. There was a Daily Star event that we attended, Intra and I and our other friends, and it made us feel so proud to be Bangladeshi, and it made us think about what we could do to build our nations. It was actually called Building Nation Builders of Tomorrow event. So all that to say that I know that my kids were not exposed to any of this. They were living in North America and exposed to a completely different world. And when I would try to take my daughter to cultural events, I often noticed that lots of children would be on their phones. They would just be playing on their phones while a cultural event was happening. And all that was really inspired the creation of Guba Books. And I think that's what we're aspiring to do. We're aspiring to not think about, okay, well, if we create high quality books, it won't be a big profit margin. We're trying not to think of that. And it really helps to have Intra on board as the big creative person behind this, because she doesn't think in that line at all. Sometimes I put on a business hat and I'd be like, oh no, let's just go with a cheap printing job or something. But ultimately, I think Intra's that voice of reason, which makes me remember why I started Guba Books. That it's really, we want to make. And I have some stuff here. So we want to make books that kids will be like proud of reading, and they'll be engaged to learn from. And this is another one of our. This is a bilingual title, and the reason we've done bilingual is because that is our reality as Bangladeshis, is that we live a very bilingual life. Even if you live in Bangladesh, you either go to an English medium school or a Bangla medium school, but it doesn't matter where you go to. English is interspersed in everyday dialogue. There are lots of words that are just not in usage in Bangla anymore. And I mean, of course, you could go into if that's the right thing or not, but that is the reality of it, where we live a very bilingual existence. And what I found after starting Guba Books is that many people here are they don't speak it and they don't read it. So it's very approachable for them to start with a bilingual title and then just progress onto something that's fully in Bengali. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Intra, do you want to jump in here? Because I know you're on the creative side of things, and I feel like you have such great energy. I just want to hear from you about Guba Books.
Just before I start, just please excuse the two kids at the back. One of them is crying far away, and the other one is very nearby. But so
no worries. This is our new reality these days. Yes. It is quite normal.
Exactly. Going back to what you said, Tazreen, earlier. আমি আর রায়া ঢাকায় বড় হয়েছি, সো আমরা আমাদের প্রথম 18 বছর আমরা ঢাকায় ছিলাম, এন্ড দেন সো আমাদের জন্য বাংলা ইজিলি, মানে আমরা সারাক্ষণ বাংলায় কথা বলতেছি, ইংলিশে কথা বলতেছি, we are speaking both languages at the same time. And যতই আমরা প্রাউড আমাদের ভাষা নিয়ে, যতই আমরা চাই আরো বেশি আমাদের ভাষাটাকে মানুষের সাথে শেয়ার করতে, it sort of somehow just gets diluted, in the mix, because we're constantly speaking two languages, and so আমাদের মানে সবচেয়ে বড় ওকে আমার ছেলে এর সাথে আমি বাংলায় কথা বলি, যতটুক বলতে পারি সারাক্ষণ বাংলায় কথা বলতে থাকি ওর সাথে, আর ও রেসপন্ড করে আমার সাথে ইংলিশে, এন্ড যখন বাংলায় বলবে যে আমি এই বক্সের মধ্যে লিভ করি, or মানে he'll say something which is so random. I'm just like, what did you just say? ও হাফ বাংলায় বলবে, হাফ ইংলিশ বলবে। আমারটা হচ্ছে কি হাফ ইংলিশ হাফ বাংলা, ওটা হচ্ছে কি super complicated, I don't know what he's saying because he's really mixing the two, so আমার মনে হয় যে যারা মানে আমরা তো ঢাকায় বড় হয়েছি, বাংলাদেশে বড় হয়েছি, কিন্তু there are so many people who are listening, I'm sure, who যারা outside of বাংলাদেশে বড় হয়েছে, and ওদের জন্য মানে ফর এক্সাম্পল আমাদের বাচ্চাদের জন্য আমরা অনেক অনেক চাই যে ভাষাটাকে ধরে রাখতে, somehow make বাংলা cool. That's what we need to do, because French is cool, Spanish is cool. Like, why is Bangla not cool? It is cool, but the thing is that, like, how do we really put a stamp on it? You know, mane ei jinishtai mane সারাক্ষণ this is what we're doing all the time. And ami Ruben ke like, and the best way of doing it, of course, is mane bhashata যেভাবে like your like Takbir's way of doing it is so cool, you know, like language through Instagram, and then like we can see that and be like, oh, this is cool. And also trying to figure out words in Bangla, like I'm sure you get so many requests from people saying that, oh, what is, like the other day I was reading a book and the word miracle came up and I was like, miracle er Bangla ase? What is miracle er Bangla? You know, so আমি নিজেই like আমি and Raya আমরা কত শিখছি বাংলা আমাদের বাচ্চাদেরকে বাংলা শিখাইতে গিয়ে, you know, and that's the okay, and that's the beauty of doing what we're doing with Guba. That's my husband and child. Sorry, he's just going off to work.
Hi.
So, yeah, so আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের কালচারে, আমাদের ভাষায় কত কিছু আছে যেটা আমরা শেয়ার করতে পারি, you know, মানে there is so much, you know, there's all these like tai mama bari jai, there's so many Bangla choras which are unfortunately a lot to do with like child marriages and like really like dodgy things, you know. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things which are not necessarily politically correct, but we grew up with them, and then of course there are the other ones which are absolutely fine, and those are the ones that give us comfort now. ওইগুলা আমরা চাই আমাদের বাচ্চাদেরকে শিখাতে, and যেন ওদের একটা sense of comfort আসে from their roots rather than from, you know, you can get it from everywhere, but it would be lovely if we can get it from our roots because it's specific to us, right? So sorry, my husband is going off to work. So yeah, so it's more specific to us, and I think যারা বাইরে বড় হয়েছে, বাংলাদেশের বাইরে যারা বড় হয়েছে, ওদের কাছে জিনিসটা আরো অনেক strong হয় because they're away, you know, like we're not in Dhaka or Bangladesh, we're not there. If we were there, I guess it would feel more like, oh, কিছু করতে হবে না because we're already here. But because we're far away, you feel like you really need to pull at where you come from, and just to pull towards your roots, because who are we if we don't know what our identity is? And I guess to discover that is what we spend our whole lives. Like the children of 1971, the photographs, they're so beautiful. Like the people, just looking at their faces, you're like, who are these cool people? Like, why don't I know them? You know, so and there's so much that all these people have to share with us, and that, you know, and with Guba Books, I think we also have a lot to share with the newer generations of Bangladeshis outside of Bangladesh, to really truly find our identity, because Bangladesh is 50. We're not actually that old, and even though we have a massive like Mughal background and lots of like so much like Hindu background, there's a lot at the back, but in the 50 years there's also a specific identity that came after we became Bangladesh, and that identity itself is so nuanced and it has so much detail, and if we can, like with your Instagrams, you know, like Children of 1971 and Life in Bangla, with those, and with Guba Books, obviously, if we can really, like, you know, make that identity something to be proud of. I mean, we do that. That's exactly what we're doing. So I think it's like, yeah, I think it paves the way for when Bangladesh is 100.
Absolutely. And you know, it's fascinating too, because I feel like the need that exists when it comes to having bilingual resources, I mean, it's phenomenal. Like, you guys have been able to like really hone in on that aspect, which is so crucial, because I feel like when I was younger, if I had that kind of resource, I was obviously very curious about my identity. I had a lot of exposure to it just by way of being a part of Abak and my family and the broader Dallas community at large. But if I were to have something like that to really engage in my curiosity, I probably could have learned Bangla much sooner and had much more of an understanding of my own identity a bit earlier, and be proud of it as well. And I think you touched on so many things that we're all trying to do, which is, you know, show that we are proud, but create awareness of it a bit more. Bangla is the seventh most spoken language in the world. And there's so much art already there for us to kind of share with the world. And I love that that's exactly what you all are doing. I really appreciate that. So I want to pause. We're almost at the hour. Do you all have questions for one another? I know we all just kind of went through one by one and each gave our spiel, but I want to pause and see if you guys have any reactions to one another before we wrap up.
I just want to say, like, I mean, obviously, I was really grateful to be a part of this panel because I appreciate both of your accounts so much, especially what you guys are doing with Google Books. I really definitely needed that when I was younger. I'm very much like the whitewashed Bengali and stuff. So, and, you know, like, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm proud of who I am now, but, you know, having those kind of resources in Takbir, like what you're doing with Life in Bangla, those are definitely necessary. I know so many Bangladeshis who are not comfortable with sharing the fact that they don't know Bangla that well or don't know how to read and write Bangla. And it's actually kind of something that many people are ashamed of admitting. And you guys providing these resources, it's incredible, like to just have that access and, you know, be able to learn something that we may not be so proud of in ourselves, but we have the chance to actually better ourselves in. So just thank you so much for all that you do.
Raya, you were going to say something?
Thank you so much, Nafisa. That meant a lot. You know, when we started this, I don't know what we kind of expected. It was based on our individual needs, but then you realize that exists for so many people, like just that need to connect. But then when just to what Intra said, that when you're looking at misogynistic stuff or just, you know, books that are not done very well, the editorial content and the production is just poor, you don't want to engage with it. And the same with what you see on televisions. But I want to tell both of you that it's so, because my kids are growing up here, I always wonder, oh, আমি তো বাংলা কথা বলতে পারবো না ওদের সাথে, মানে it's like Intra just said the whole thing in Bangla, but I didn't, because I'm like, oh, I have to code switch. I have to speak English, even though you said that I can speak in Bangla, Tazreen, so I forgot that. But I just want to say that looking at you guys, this is going to sound so weird, but I'm like, oh, my kids will be like you guys. and I feel so happy because you're awesome.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say, like, my dad, he speaks completely in English to me. Like, growing up and stuff, he never spoke Bangla to me because he was always trying to integrate into this culture, right? And I feel like that's exactly what you guys are struggling with here. And, you know, I understand Bangla completely. I will speak Bangla, just not today, you know, because don't embarrass myself in front of everybody when you guys know Bangla so well. But, you know, yeah, I can't wait to see your kids grow up.
Amazing. And you know what, Nafisa, don't be afraid, even if as they say, Bhanga Bangla, that I get, people say that to me all the time because I learned Bangla, I grew up speaking it, but I'm still not as confident in myself. That's okay though. As long as you try, I think that says a lot. And someone wrote on here, Intra, your energy is infectious and we all need it. And I couldn't agree more. You just made me so excited about everything that you were all doing. And being Bengali.
It's the fuel that gets Gooba Books going.
Absolutely, I can imagine. Well, let me just say thank you all so much for joining us on this virtual panel, even after we had to postpone it. In the midst of COVID and everything else that's going on in the world, I think it's so refreshing to hear about the new ways to engage via social media, via Gooba Books and the learning and the teaching and the resources and tools that you are all providing. And also through sharing stories. Storytelling itself can be so powerful and can really, you know, show us exactly who we are and how we all can relate to one another. So I want to say thank you. And as we wrap up, I just want to remind everyone, if you want to learn more about what Albak is doing, the Academy of Bangla Arts and Culture, and our Bangla School, which we have to teach the next generation of Bangla kids, Bengali kids, please go to academyofbanglaartsandculture.com, as well as all of the social profiles of Gooba Books, Children of 1971, and Life in Bangla. We will share all these resources afterwards, but just a reminder again that all these resources exist and we encourage you to take a look and join. with that said, Raya, you have last few words.
Sorry, somebody asked a question. I think it was Bushra. She's asked another question now, but she asked a question about our books being on Amazon, and actually, it's on our website, gubabooks.com. We were on Amazon, and we're not there right now. Some of our books are, but not all of them. So sorry about that.
But you can get it on your website, right? gubabooks.com.
Wait, sorry, I didn't get to say. So I also wanted to thank you guys for this amazing panel, and also like to you guys, the founder of Guba Books, Nafisa. You guys are doing such amazing things. Like my cousins are struggling with the same thing. They're like, my nieces and nephews, they're all growing up. They don't know Bangla, so I'm definitely gonna get your books because they need them. And Nafisa, the stories you guys put on it's mind blowing. Like I've showed my parents, I've showed my sister because the thing is, a lot of these stories, they're not spoken about openly because they're not. There's this really like deep concept of shame in our community. So it's really good, like these stories that are coming out, like it's really opening up those conversations. So thank you guys, like a lot. It really means a lot. And thank you again to Tazreen, like for the amazing panel.
I want to wrap up with one last question that I'm seeing in our comments from Bushra, which is, what is your favorite Bangla word? Maybe we can go around, share what our favorite Bangla words, and then we can wrap up. I see everyone's thinking. I'll give you a second. I'll start with myself. I'll say, okay, awesome. So my favorite, and again, I always question if I'm saying it correctly, is king korto bobimur, which is to not say much, but it's such a big word that you're saying so much just by saying it in and of itself. It's one of my favorites. Intra, you want to go next?
I've got one similar, which is quite long and tongue twisty. Apado mostok, which is from head to toe.
Wow, I didn't even know that was a word. That's amazing. Nafisa?
This is hard. I really love like curse words because those are the ones that obviously I was not allowed to say growing up and stuff, and those are the ones I heard the most, when my parents shouted at me. But I don't know. I don't. Can everybody else go? I'll like think
sure
before I.
No problem. I think that's something we can be public about. Go ahead, Takbir.
Going off of Nafisa's point, me and Nafisa actually, we did a collab on like an Urban Dictionary collab, and it was like curse words and then also like things our parents used to call us. So if you guys are interested, go check that out. It was really funny. It was a really fun collab. But my favorite word, which is actually in that theme also, is anari. And the reason why it's my favorite word is because one day my mom, she was asking my sister to do that. Like me and my sister were cleaning up the bedroom or something. And then my sister, she kind of just took the bedsheet and she kind of like threw it on. My mom was like, "You're such an anari," or whatever. And my sister got so offended. She didn't know what it meant. And she's like, "What is that? Is that a curse?" And my mom, she started laughing. She was like, "No, it just means you're useless."
Oh.
Yeah, but my mom was joking. It was funny,
of
but
course.
It's a fun memory for us.
Absolutely. I'm sure we could all relate in one way or another. Raya, you want to go next?
I have two that I want to share. My favorite is Ashtorjo because it just kind of like Ashtorjo.
I love it.
It just is. There's so many translations for it, like WTF, like so many things, like Ashtorjo. And the other one is something that when Takbir and Nafisa were talking about their parents and swear words, I don't even know if I should say this here, but we sometimes like say to our kids like, "Hey, Januar."
Oh, no.
And my older one actually looked it up and she said, "Did you just call me a beast child?" So that's.
Don't you love it when they come back to you with that response? That's what happens.
Sorry, it's a very Bengali thing. Parents mean no harm, okay?
There are some other Bengali words which you can't translate, like ghorar dim. Like how do you explain ghorar dim to anyone? I don't know if you guys have heard this one, but like
of course.
Ghorar dim. Like what? Very strange.
Nafisa, we'll give you that last word.
So there is one word that I've been saying all the time and stuff, and I've been saying it's from our dictionary too, because that was the one that was like, it kind of describes like life, and I consider life very chaotic. And the word is, and I'm going to say it right, but brissinkola. I think I've been saying this with my friends and stuff, brissinkola a lot, like chaos in general. So yeah, that's it. I would say, you know, like I said, I have a lot more, but none of them very appropriate for this channel right now. So
I mean, we could probably go on for days and days about our favorite words, but I guess I'll end with being a little, expected, which is abak, which means being surprised and I guess sometimes happy and sad, both ways. It goes both ways, but it's generally a good feeling when you're surprised in a good way. So I'll end on that note. And once again, thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks for this great engaging conversation. And thank you everyone who watched and joined our live discussion. We're going to share this link for this conversation so you can watch it or share it with your friends after we end it off today. So thank you so much. Again, we really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining.